In the second part of our interview, David Coates, retired managing partner at KPMG, who has years of experience with Vermont's debt and fiscal woes, proposes corrective measures to address the state's unfunded liabilities. David, last week, another major credit agency downgraded Vermont's bond rating, and this means that more taxpayer monies will be needed to pay down the pension debt. The governor isn't sure how much taxpayer monies will be needed to be diverted. As you mentioned in our interview last week, Vermont's unfunded liabilities puts us in the bottom third of all states. Now, you have said that raising income taxes will have to be the way out of this problem. Could you please explain?
Well, where else do we get the money to pay it unless we raise taxes or cut programs? And just looking at the last session in the legislature, there's not a willingness to cut programs.
Okay.
And as we saw, I think Senator Kitchell indicated that all of a sudden the additional amount that's due on the annual amount that must be paid in for the pensions, and she was referring to the teachers' pensions, because that particular pension is underfunded, and the ratio on that is very low. It's in the low 60s. Okay. So that creates a real problem. Now, to the extent that we don't fund those, and that means the liability will only go up again and again and again.
So only 60% of the pension is funded?
That's what's funded as far as the teachers are. Overall, the state, when you take the state and the teachers, the net is about 64%.
That's still very low.
We're in the bottom.
Right.
We're in the bottom, yes.
So my understanding is that, this is so bad that we can't really tax our way out of the problem. We need to grow our way out of the problem. And so I would think that to do that, Vermont needs to become a pro-growth state again, and for that it needs to be a freedom state. However, you don't think that it's going in that direction?
Well, let me go back on that tax thing again.
Okay.
I throw that out only because it doesn't make any sense. We're already taxed to the limit.
Exactly.
So in order to go further, we would have to make the taxes probably double, because that's our biggest tax raising of revenue funds.
Right, right.
So yeah, that puts us way out on the line. And as the governor has said, this affordability is the key for Vermonters. And to the extent we keep raising taxes, then we become even more unaffordable than we have been.
So what other corrective measures would you propose for this problem?
Well, for this problem right here, one way, of course, would be to make some changes in terms of how we deal with those, not on an annual basis, but in total, to reduce some of those additional costs coming up. I would also say we look realistically at what the assumptions are, so that we know what the liability is. Right now, it's a moving target.
Okay.
And a moving target, as we all know, is hard to hit.
Right.
Although many Vermonters are good at hitting moving targets in the woods, but we certainly aren't good at hitting moving targets in Montpelier.
Right. So we should look at 7% or 7.5% or 6.5%?
We should be looking at 6.5% is what I think. Now that's net of fees.
Okay.
And one other thing that always happens, and we set a target at, say, of 7.5%.
Yeah.
But if we pay fees of 2%, then we're only going to get 7.3.
I see.
So
I see.
This is another misconception.
So where does politics play into all of this?
Well, the politics come in because they have to deal with this once a year up in Montpelier. Well, let me give you the best example.
Okay.
As you mentioned in the outset, I've been working on this for several years.
Right.
I haven't been called before a legislative panel in the last 3 years. They asked me to come in this year, and they didn't set a date. And then when we followed up, they said all of their time was used up. So they don't want to hear from the other side of this issue.
But David, you are a registered Democrat.
Oh yes, proud of it.
And yet you see that our legislature in Montpelier is controlled by the left, and they're not open to this idea?
Well, I think it comes back to the unions.
Okay.
The unions are a powerful force in Montpelier. From my perspective, it's pretty hard when you're sitting on one side of the table, and then on the other side of the table you have somebody that may be a legislator that has been supported by the unions.
I see. That does complicate things.
It complicates things.
Okay, well, thank you for lending your expertise to this subject. But next week, we will continue the conversation, and we will look at solutions to turning Vermont's economy around.